Hey fam, welcome back to Scar Stories. I'm the host, Nicole Golden, and I am so excited. Literally say that every week, but I love the people I have on this. To introduce you to my friend Zach Rippey, who is also the podcast host of I Like Birds. We're going to talk about that in a little bit because that thing is blowing up. And I want to make sure that you guys get over and listen to what he has to say about that. But Zach has an incredible story, and I can't remember if it was my idea or Brian's idea to interview you, Zach. I think it was my idea, and I'm going to hold on to that because I think this is going to be a rockin' interview, and tons of people are going to listen, and then I'm going to hold it over Brian's head because he helps me come up with people to interview. But Zach has an absolute incredible story, and it's taken a lot of twists and turns even within the past year, and I would say even within the past month. I didn't say this, but I want to talk a little bit about Armani a little bit if you're up for it.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
okay, cool. So, anyways, so I first want us to start just with people getting to know you a little bit. Obviously, I've already said your name like 5,000 times, Zach Rippey. Um, and I met you how many years ago?
When I was 19 years old, or 19 or 20, so about 7 years ago now.
Okay, okay. And you were somewhat, I mean, I think Noah was, I mean, you had to have been around 6 months. He was older, right? Was he a year at that point or
He was
no?
like six months to a year. I think, yeah, I think in that window, maybe 9 months is when I first started coming to
Okay, cool.
Center
So
Point.
Noah's his son, and I met Zach and Noah, those that many years ago. And Zach was a brand new dad, basically. So tell us a little bit about that journey, Zach, because that to me is just fascinating. I've always, you probably don't know this, but I've always respected you and loved you so much
Oh, thank you.
because you were not handed an easy journey, especially not
That's
at
for sure.
18, 19 years old. So talk to us a little bit about what it was like finding out you were going to be a dad that
Yeah.
young and walking through all those emotions and figuring out what you're going to do about school and your relationships and all of those fun things.
Yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions when I found out. I remember I was watching Prison Break at my mom's house in my room, what you do at 18 years
Yeah,
old. And I was
exactly.
just, then my girlfriend at the time, who I was with for, at that time, about 3 years, I think about 3 years. And we were high school sweethearts, as they say. We won cutest couple in our yearbook. And when we graduated, we were actually going through like a rough time. We didn't really know what we were going to do with our own individual lives. I was working a lot at Papa John's trying to save up money for a nice car. And we were just kind of like going on different paths, it felt like. And then we split up. And then a few weeks later, we got back together. And then a few weeks later after that, she became pregnant. And I just remember going to her house, and it was just such a, like my stomach was in my butt.
Mm-hmm.
Like your stomach just fell to
Yeah.
the ground, and it was just such a bizarre feeling of, man, what now? And I was so young and naive at the time that I was thinking of all options. We were thinking about
Yeah.
everything under the sun, from adoption to abortion to me joining the military, to just everything and anything to just be
Yeah.
able to take care of this situation. And we kind of just went with the flow. And my mom was very helpful and very supporting and encouraging. And then we tried to make it work. We moved out together and got an apartment. And then that car that I worked really hard for and saved up for actually got stolen the first night of my apartment. It was
Like
stolen
when
for
it
like
rains, it pours. You're like, can
exactly.
I catch a break?
Yeah, so I remember, I think actually it was the second night, because the first night I remember, the next day I went down and like my car was starting weird, like it's been jiggied with, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is strange. And then I thought about it. I had the little sign that something was up. And then I remember second night of the new apartment, cops were banging on my door at like 1 a.m. saying somebody stole my car, my vehicle. And then I was actually supposed to start college the next day as well. So that was just the most stressful time. And my girlfriend at the time was like 8 or 9 months pregnant.
Oh my
She was
gosh.
yeah, she was eight months pregnant at that time. And it was just a lot. And then he came, and then we tried to make it work in a relationship wise. And we kept going back to our old ways of fighting a lot and just not getting
Yeah.
along. We just didn't. It's not like she's a bad person or I'm a bad person. We just did not mesh well. And
Yeah.
the reason I met you is because I decided to come to church because I was invited multiple times by your niece-in-law, Taylor Lipsy,
Yes.
not Taylor Davis, and
Yes.
her friend Gina. They encouraged me to come to church at Outback, where we used to all work together. And I went there, and then that's where we met, so it was like
Yeah.
the roller coaster of emotions were definitely there. It was some highs and lows, and then we ended up just being able to split up and just realize like maybe we need to just be co-parents. She
Yeah.
wasn't happy with the decision at the time. I was happy with the decision at the
Yeah.
time. I felt like it was the right one to make, and I felt bad for it, of course, especially because I did want to make it work. It kept falling back into a pattern, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I identified that. And I just remember one day driving to work, looking outside at the sky, and I felt like a bird. I felt like freedom. I felt like,
Yeah.
oh man, like even though I'm in this situation and I have a little baby, I'm going to figure it out, So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes like different people in your situation, it's they rush and force the relationship and enter into a marriage that neither person is ready for, and it
Mhm.
becomes a nightmare not only for those two individuals but also for the child. And ultimately then the child, I think, sometimes even begins to blame him or herself for the marriage, and sometimes just taking a step back and figuring out, okay, we've got to make the wisest decision for ourselves and for our child. And maybe just co-parenting is the wisest decision, and I think in your case, for sure, it definitely was, because
Yeah.
I assume we're going to talk about your wife, Katherine, whom I adore. So you said you were invited by Taylor and Gina, love them. Did you feel like kind of an added burden of like, gosh, I really do need to get into church right now because I'm a new dad, I need some help? Or was it just kind of like, yeah, I just, know this is something I should be doing? What was the push besides just getting invited to get back into, were you getting back into church, or were you getting into church for the first time?
Well, it was more of the first time on my own accord, my own decision,
Yeah.
which my dad brought me to church a few amount of times when I was younger, and I would sleep in sometimes, and he would get kind of salty that I wouldn't go with him. And but he went to always like a Baptist church, and I'm sure you're familiar with Baptist church. It's not really a place for like a young mind that's very curious to
Yeah.
appreciate and understand who
Yep.
Jesus really is. So I decided when I got invited, I really did enjoy it, and I really did feel like there was so much to learn. And I've always been a very like hungry spirit to just learn and grow
Yes.
and obtain all knowledge as much as possible. So when I went, I also really enjoyed the fact that Noah had somewhere to go, like to make
Mm-hmm.
friends and to a good environment. And he always had so much fun there, just like his little spirit lit up after he attended the nursery there and stuff. And I just had a good feeling about it every time I went, and it was definitely. I don't think it was me going back. It was just me kind of investigating, And
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
your church is so good about is the people who are investigating Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, and what's so cool is that Noah and Brooke are about the same age,
Hmm.
and so they became really sweet friends. And we'll talk in a second about him moving. And that was like heartbreaking for my kids, because even Ryder, who's 2 years younger, I mean, they just adored Noah and still talk
Hmm.
about him all the time, even now.
Oh.
So anyways, but okay. So now we're at the part of the story where you're attending Center Point regularly, and then
Mhm.
you meet this beautiful woman, Katherine
Yeah.
Sargent at the time. So talk to me a little bit. And I was like, I did think about this. I was like, after I was sending you the questions of what we were going to talk about, I'm like, oh my gosh, I should interview Katherine too, because I think this would be so cool. But talk to me a little bit about dating her, and how quickly, or was it a process of her accepting, like, okay, if I'm in a relationship with this guy, this means I'm also in a relationship with his son? Like, what was
Mhm.
that like,
All
that
right.
church?
So yeah, I'll tell you that for sure. It's actually a really cool story because um, she was always every time I went to go pick up Noah, she was in the same classroom as Noah, and Noah always seemed to be in her arms when I went to go pick him up. And it was just very interesting to me because I kind of noticed that, and it really made me take a second look at her in kind of
Yeah.
like a foreshadowing kind of way. So
Yeah.
I thought she was very pretty. I thought she was unique. I saw she had blue hair. I was like, that's not really my type. And then she went back to blonde. I was like, all right, I'm a little curious and whatnot. And then I remember one day, this is a really cool story because I told her the story and she told me the back end of it. One day I went to church and I brought like a rose for her, and I told
Yeah.
Noah to give it to her teacher, to his teacher, and So he went in there, and then he was supposed to do it and give it to her, but she wasn't there. So he ended up giving it to Jamie's mom, Kathy
Okay.
Sharp.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like,
Which
let's
Jamie, for
fast.
those that like Catherine and Jamie are best friends. So that's the
Exactly.
connection there. Yeah.
And Catherine actually used to live at the Sharp's
Yes.
house at the
Yes.
time. So Mrs. Sharp came home one day and told Catherine, like, hey, look what Noah brought me or whatever. And then Catherine had this feeling that the rose was intended for her through me and
Okay.
whatnot. And then Catherine told me that every time I came to pick up Noah, she would check my hand to see if I had a ring on. And so she became a little curious about me and whatnot. And then so I did, like, she went out of town to Japan for like 2 weeks. And I was
Yeah.
like, at that time, I was planning to ask her out. And I saw her at the gym and she was with Jamie. So I didn't want to ask her out in front of her friend. So I kept
Yeah.
like being like, all right, the next time I see her, I'm going to ask her out. And it just kept being delayed and delayed for like a month. And then she took over the scheduling for you at the kids center. And then so
Yeah.
she texted me randomly and I was like, okay, like she already has my number. Win, like that's
Yeah.
a win. And then she scheduled me in one of the classrooms, and then we ran into each other right after. And then I just asked her to coffee. And then when we started dating, going to coffee, we took it slow for sure. But she told me that if I didn't have Noah, she wouldn't have really been as attracted to me.
Oh,
Something
right.
about she said she loved Noah that much that it kind of made her curious about his dad.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
just so sweet because she fell for Noah before she fell for me.
Yeah.
And so that process for her of being like involved with him was a very smooth process, and it kind of made it easier for us to form a relationship together because I could already tell that she really loved him. That was never an issue.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
an issue. It was an issue in the past with the previous girl I dated. She wasn't really sure about if she wanted to be involved in something like that. And I totally understood. We were
Yeah.
super young,
Yeah.
but when Catherine really seemed to be understanding and embracing it, I was like, man, this is crazy. It was
Yeah.
definitely a blessing.
Yeah. I love it. And it's so cool too, because, at the time she was nannying and like you said, she was serving at the church in the children's environment. So like she had that heart for children already. And so
Yeah.
just to see that connection, I mean, and I'm going to tell you too, the way she loves Noah, it's a beautiful thing. Like, Noah is her own, but it's as if she bore Noah. You know what I'm saying? Like just that love and connection that they have. It is the sweetest thing.
Mhm.
So, okay, so I would say, let's see, you moved to Texas was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago now?
It was like 2.5 now, 2.5
Okay.
years. Yeah.
And before you made the decision to move to Texas, you made the decision that Noah was going to live, would you say full time with his mom? Or is it 50-50? How does it work now?
It used to be it used to be 50-50 when we were in town, which was beautiful, and I miss it a lot. But he was starting kindergarten, so and his mom got stationed in South Carolina for the military. So it was either we stay in Florida, we go to South Carolina, or we go to Texas where her family is and where her heart has been trying to go back there for a while.
Yeah.
So we made the decision, with Noah's mom that we would get spring break, winter break, and majority of summer. I think it's like
Yeah.
8 of the 9 weeks of summer, and or 8 of the 10 weeks of summer. And it wasn't something that I thought was going to be easy, and it's still not easy. It's still a huge challenge, but it is best for Noah as far as if we stayed 50-50, it would have been too confusing to be like, oh, Wednesday you're here, this weekend you're
Yeah.
there. So we had
Yeah.
to do what was best for him and best for us, honestly, as well. We didn't want to, she was military, so we didn't want to like chase her every time she got stationed somewhere
Yes.
else.
Yes.
So we
Yeah.
made the decision for Texas to be closer to her family. And at the time I was doing a lot of stand-up. So I was trying to come to a bigger city for that. And I don't know, our hearts were being pulled by God to go to Texas.
And we're getting interrupted by a little guest. Give me 1 second. Yes,
Oh,
buddy.
hello.
Okay. You got to give me 1 minute because I'm right in the middle of this meeting. You can go do your tablet if you want, okay? This is fun, real life stuff. And we're just going to roll with it. Hey, Braxy, Mama needs you to calm down, okay? I'm going to just hop up here and shut this door real fast.
For those of you who don't have kids, just be careful because a lot of things get interrupted when you have kids. I couldn't even come to the microphone in time.
Way to go. Thanks for filling in for me.
Filling in.
I feel like I did the awesome parent hack of locking the door. So he's going to be crying in the background, but we're just going to keep rolling with it because this is my life and it is what it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
there we go.
so okay, yeah. So you just explained the decision with that. And
Hmm.
then in the meantime, then Katherine got pregnant, and
Hmm.
so now you've got um Noah in, is it South Carolina or North Carolina? I cannot remember which one is it.
South.
South
Yeah.
Carolina. Okay, and then now you've got a brand new baby, and walk me through processing all of those emotions. Like one son's in another state, now you've got a new baby. Are you thinking, okay, how am I going to walk Noah through all of this? That I'm with his brother all the time and I'm with him only, here and there. I mean, talk me through the process of working
Yeah.
through all of those emotions.
Yeah, that's definitely hard. One of the things, Catherine gave me an ultimatum. She was like, not ultimatum, but she came home one day when we were living in Texas, and she was like, I either really want a dog or I really want to get pregnant, So I was like, well, I don't want to walk a dog, so I guess we'll get pregnant, Because I knew we were gonna have kids again, of our own, one day. I just didn't
Yeah.
realize it was gonna be so fast when we moved to Texas, but it happened. And one of the things I did stress to her and I was worried about, and I still struggle with this to this day, is like, when I'm with Malachi, because he's like 1.5, almost 1.5 now. So he's
And he's
getting
the
into a little.
cutest thing.
Thank you. He's getting into a little like toddler phase and whatnot, and it is hard for me because like I see him and it really reminds me of Noah
Mm,
when he was at that age, when he was around more, and it makes me miss him even more, and it makes me feel like a piece of like my family's like not there, and it's like super
yeah.
hard. It's like I'm constantly missing Noah,
Yeah.
and I have to. Noah's been so great, and he came up all summer, and him and Malachi had a really great bond. And I was actually, the quarantine was kind of like a huge blessing because I was able to stay home all summer with
Okay.
Noah, and
Okay. That
it
is
was
amazing.
awesome. Yeah, so
That's
we spent
amazing.
so much time together. We went fishing, we did activities, we went on trips, we did all things under the sun, and him and Malachi bonded a lot. And he did have a couple moments of being jealous of Malachi, like
Mm,
Noah wanted to play with dad, but Malachi was kind of like involved also.
yeah.
So it's definitely emotional, especially when Malachi grows so much and it's like Noah misses it. And then Noah grows so
Yeah.
much and then we all miss it, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
luckily there's a FaceTime
Yes.
application. We're blessed with that, but also it just like FaceTiming is hard for me as well sometimes because it just reminds me that I'm not there. I have to
Mm,
like it's like I feel like an astronaut sometimes,
yeah. Yeah.
and so yeah, it's definitely it's the biggest thing I struggle with, and it seems like it's going to be a forever thing until he's old enough to um just call me when he wants or come see me when he wants, or
Yeah.
so it's hard. That's the hardest thing I deal with, and emotions get had a lot about it, and there
Yeah.
is no solution. There's no,
No, you're right.
oh yeah, there's no
Yeah.
solution. It's just praying that God is with him in his heart, like when I'm not there, and him
Yeah.
realizing. I was talking to Katherine last night. I was like, man, this I was talking to this other mutual friend of ours, and she was telling me that like Noah's always gonna look up to you, and Noah's always like has you as like a strong man to like look up to in his life and whatnot. And I was just thinking like I'm so grateful that like he sees me as like Superman. He sees me
Yeah.
as still
Yeah.
his dad, even though I'm not there. He doesn't like hold that against me. Like he
Yeah.
understands like why I'm not there, and his
Yeah.
understanding of him and his mom splitting up with me, splitting up together, he realizes like why, like he
Yes.
understands, he asked the right questions and he gets it, and he's not like,
Yeah.
he doesn't say, oh poor me, or
Yeah.
like he doesn't get too in his feelings about it. He's just
Yeah.
very like,
Yeah.
he's sharp,
Yeah.
and it's great to see.
Well, and I think the thing that you and Katherine have done so well, and I don't know his mom personally, but I know enough to know like she loves him really well. But I know
Mhm.
that you and Katherine have really put um, you have just loved him so unconditionally. You've put all this safety around him. So he feels very secure, very safe. And then I think like he's got your same inquisitive side where he's asking the questions, he's processing. I think one of the things we do a disservice to kids is we forget that like they're able to understand stuff. I mean, scriptures even talks about having faith like a child, having a mind like a child. Like kids are able to understand stuff. They're intuitive, they pick up on things. And so I think
Yeah.
sometimes trying to shield them from stuff is dangerous and a huge disservice because they're reading between the lines. And I talked to a counselor about this once, but like if we're not explaining things to children, if we're not walking them through situations, oftentimes what will happen is they'll look at the situation and blame themselves. But when we take the time to actually talk them through, like, no, like your mom and I, we made this decision. Here's why. And then here, and explaining situations, walking them through that helps them process, okay, this has nothing to do with me, everything to do with my parents. And I think it even builds the trust too. So I think that's been awesome that you guys have been walking him through that stuff. And you're right. I think it's the messiness of life there where we want all of the emotions to just be happy all the time. And we want all the questions answered, and we want everything just to be smooth and taken care of. And you're right. We just have to embrace that, like, no, life is hard. It's messy. It's not always the way we want it, but we have to deal with what's been given with us and make it happen. And that's what you've done. And that's what you've always done. You've taken what God has given you and just been like, okay, I'm gonna make it happen, and I'm gonna work with it, and I'm gonna do my very best, and that's all I've got, and then Jesus is gonna fill in the rest of it. So
for sure.
Okay, so the last two questions, and I don't know, can you hear Braxton in the background right now?
I cannot, no.
Okay, I'm really hoping that people aren't going to be able to, but whatever. So, mom of the year right here. So you had mentioned it, that you were getting into comedy. And I thought that was like the funnest thing. I'm so bummed. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a scheduling conflict or what was going, if I was pregnant, one of the 59,000 times I've been pregnant.
You never came and saw me.
I know, we never did. And I'm so mad about that. But what got you into comedy? And then are you still, because I know some of your pursuits have changed. Are you still in comedy, or talk me through this season of where you're at right now? So what got you into comedy, and then where are you at right now?
Yeah. What got me into comedy was when I was in high school, I was in drama class and advanced thespians, and went to states and stuff. It's I was a jock where I played basketball, but I was also a theater kid.
I love it.
So I always had this muscle of being able to make my class laugh, my friends laugh on command, and just being kind of sharp with it. So I was like, you know what, let me try stand up. And I always wrote jokes and stuff and stories down. I'm more of a writer, and I just wanted to bring that to the stage. So once I did that, I really liked the feeling once a laugh came back at you. It was like an adrenaline. It was like a high. It felt good.
Yeah.
And so I just kept pursuing it until until COVID happened. I was just going harder and harder, and I wanted more and more stage time. It was kind of addicting. It really was, of just, opportunity after opportunity. And then you're starting to get paid for it. You're starting to do casinos. You're starting to sleep in beds that aren't yours. You're just starting to, you're living, it's like a fast life, and it was really fun, and it was great. And then once COVID happened, it all got taken away. And then I just really opened up the word for the first time. And then I realized that I was doing stand up for me. I wasn't doing it for God, And then, so that got kind of realized through that season. And then once I just kind of kept reading and reading, I realized that I have so many gifts that God gave me to glorify him, and I wasn't doing that, And then so I was like, can I still do it in stand up? Yeah, I'm sure I can, but stand up is closed right now. It doesn't exist right now. The world is shut down. So I was like, all right, what can I do? And I've always been a writer, and then I just started writing through the lens of God. I started writing through with him. So when I would write, I was like, man, I just really like what I'm writing, and I feel like I need to share it with the world. And so this idea just dropped on my head about starting a podcast. And I've always wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't know what if I wanted it to be comedy or just me talking. I didn't have a very good outline or kind of structure or idea and whatnot. But then one day I was just outside. What I would do during COVID is, because it's good to be outside, and trust me, when you have kids, the deal. Being outside is the way to go. I would just stare in the sky, and I was just every time a bird would go by, I'd just be like, I like birds, man. They're free, they're moving around. It was really. And then when I started reading the Bible, I really saw how much birds were intertwined with the Holy Spirit, and with even in the first page of Genesis, when he talks about naming all the birds and creating all the birds, and it just felt very organic for me to call the podcast that. So and that
connection, like you said, when you decided to split from Noah's mom, and just you saw a bird and the freedom. I mean, it's kind of like full circle. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is full circle. And I used to actually tell my mom, we used to go get me a haircut, and we used to eat at McDonald's after. And I remember we used to feed the birds little French fries. And I remember I told her one day, I was like, I used to be a bluebird, and I really believed it, And so I told her that, and we always had this inside joke that I used to be a bluebird. So everything just kind of made sense with the birds thing.
Yeah.
And then so once I realized that I really enjoyed telling people about Jesus, because once I discovered who he really was, like once the Bible spoke back to me, it made
Yeah.
me realize, it made me really feel like childlike, like you said, childlike faith,
Mm.
and this childlike discovery, that I felt like I was the only one that knew this. And I was like, I
Yeah.
have to tell
Yeah.
somebody this. You know, it felt like I
Yeah.
was the only one that really knew it, because like everybody interprets things differently and
Yeah.
everybody has a different relationship with Jesus. I wanted to like help people even just get to know him a little bit. So that's why
Yeah. Yeah.
I started the show that I do, and it's been amazing right now. And then I was like, all right, how can I expand this? You know, I don't want to just be like, just I read and I tell you what I'm learning and whatnot. I wanted to like go deeper. So then
Yeah.
one of my pastors connected me with this program that is a 2-year Bible school ministry program, all online, all very like relaxed on your own time.
Yeah.
Called Destiny Leaders Institute. They call it DLI. So I'm like halfway through first semester right now, and it's been going
I
great.
love
I'm
that.
learning a lot. So yeah, I'm on the walk of ministry right now, and I really see stand up as kind of like a stepping stone to be able to
Yeah.
public speak, to be able
Yes.
to be witty, to be able to network, to be able to just
Yes.
connect with people, and to feel a room out. Because I did my first
Yes.
preaching message last Tuesday, and I could really feel the energy of like what they liked, what they didn't like,
Yep.
what I needed to expand on, what I needed to kind of trim down. You know, you can
Yeah.
really just gauge it because of my experience with stand up. I can do that with ministry now. So
I
it's just
love
been
that. I
crazy.
love
Yeah, it's
that.
been so cool. Yeah.
Well, and Brian always talks about that too. Like, there's a divide when you first get up in front of people. There's this divide and
Mm-hmm.
between you and the audience, and you have to find the fastest way to cross that divide to bring them in and connect with them. And he'll talk about that on Sundays too, because I personally think Bryant's funny, and I've heard he's funny.
Mm-hmm.
I'm his wife. I have to be biased, but I also
Yeah.
think he's legit funny. But I know like that's a big part of like connecting with the audience and keeping them with you. And big thing about comedy is making real life things funny. And, especially when you're dealing with scriptures and sometimes some really hard tension from the scriptures, bringing in humor and connecting with the audience is huge. So I think it's so cool. God took these passions of yours, like, and these things that you enjoy doing, writing and making people laugh, and then combining that with like passion for the scriptures and stuff. And now look at you. And it'll be so cool to see like, once you get through these classes and COVID clears and everything else, how God really does define your ministry, like what it's going to end up looking like. It's just cool to watch you on this path though, like knowing you from the
Thank you.
19-year-old with a 9-month-old to getting
Right.
married to Katherine, which Bryant did the wedding. And that literally was like one of the funnest weddings we've ever been a part of. Like,
Hey.
I think I made it into almost every single one of your photos.
Pictures.
So anyways,
awesome.
it's so cool. Okay, so let's end with this. And this is a little bit of a sad note, but we'll bring some hope to it. But you lost your best friend, I mean, what, a couple of weeks ago, right?
It was a month now, so October 6th.
Okay. And this was a freak accident. And how are you processing all of this? Can you even process it? Have you, are you in some kind of grief counseling? Like, how are you doing? I'm just dropping this on you.
No, that's totally. I'm glad you asked, because I do feel that it's such an important answer that I have, and it's crazy because I'm dealing with it actually very well because of Jesus, because I know what death is now. Like once you actually read, like I'll say just the New Testament. Once you read the New Testament and like read it slow, you really understand life and death. It's the most crazy thing in the world. You understand where somebody that is saved is going. And Armani was saved. And there's peace in that. And he was pursuing God more so in the last 6 months than he ever was before.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
I know,
crazy?
and it's just kind of like it makes total sense. Like God's timing is I don't question his timing or his will, and it just all seems to make sense. Like the clarity is had, and it's the peace is there. The peace blanket has been over his family and his friends, and a lot of people have really come to God through it. And just the fact that he did pass, and it was just such a sudden thing. It's so beautiful, because I was even me and Katherine were talking about it. Like if I didn't know who Jesus was, like the way I have been this last year, if this happened to me in 2019, like I'd be a wreck. I wouldn't know how to really deal with it. I wouldn't really know how to cope with it. I'd be, not able to go to work. I would have to put my life on hold. I turn to bad habits. Of course there's moments of just like, dang, like I miss him. It sucks. But as far as like just understanding the situation, it's been such a great feeling being able to lean on Jesus and help other people too to
Mm,
lean on Jesus through the medium of the podcast, through the medium of social media, through the medium of just people
yeah.
reading what I'm writing, So it's just been really cool to just see the fruit of his death, the glory that shines through something that like the tragedy that happened.
I've been following you like on social media and stuff, and I've just been watching how you've been leading your friends and family through this. Like I think you've
Hmm.
been, from what I can tell from social media, and but you were very honest with your social media, which I appreciate. You're not one of those just, put out all
Yeah,
the
for
good
sure.
stuff. But like you've been really leading and been strong and been pointing them back to Jesus through this whole situation. And it is
Yeah.
so crazy to me. Like I think, after the year I had last year, losing my brother in
Right.
January, and then, the difficult pregnancy we had, and then losing Bryant's mom the day after, and I don't know if people realize how close we were to his mom, but, um, I think like a lot of people are like, I just don't know how you did it. I don't know how you did it. And I think you're explaining how
Hmm.
someone does it. It's Jesus is behind the scenes, constantly preparing and putting pieces together so that when we're asked to walk through a tough situation, and we're going to be asked to walk through tough situations because our world is broken and broken things happen. This
Yeah.
side of heaven, broken things happen. This isn't, and people always, they want to get mad at God and blame God. And this isn't God's fault. This is sin's fault. Broken things
Yep.
happen. Death is a result of sin. Like that, not Armani didn't sin, but sin created death. Like we
Hmm.
die because we're broken people and sin causes death. But that's why Jesus Christ died on the cross. And I love that Armani was a believer and had accepted Jesus. And so this side of heaven, there's going to be death. There's going to be brokenness. There's going to be hard stuff, but Jesus prepares us and gets us ready. And so even just hearing like Armani's story, like it's like Jesus was just getting him ready to meet him, man. He was so,
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely.
But there is a hope. And I think for me, it's been, talk a little bit about my grief journey. Like the grief over losing my brother and the grief over losing mom were two totally different griefs.
Yeah,
It's
for
so
sure.
weird. So like Eric, committing suicide, there was an anger that I had towards him. And almost like, if I can just be completely blunt, like
Mhm.
Eric was a believer, but I wanted him to go to hell for a while. Like, seriously. Like I was like,
Yeah.
homeboy should be suffering in hell because he is putting us through hell. Like I was mad that he was in heaven for a season. And I don't know, maybe I still am. But it was like the pain that he put us through, he shouldn't be in heaven and be whole. I was just really angry about that. And people would ask, like, how real does heaven feel to you right now? Because your brother's there. I'm like, it doesn't
Mm.
feel real because I don't want him there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
Yeah.
the struggle. But then when Linda died, Bryant's mom died, she passed away from Alzheimer's. When she passed, heaven felt really real, and it still does. And I still,
Yeah.
like, it's so weird because you hear people talk about like sensing someone's presence or sensing someone's always with you. And I always thought that was a load of garbage. Like I was like,
Hmm.
whatever. But I sense her presence. Like I feel like God allows her to peek down from heaven and see things and be a part of things. And like
Oh, wow.
Bryant and I'll talk about her and talk to her, like, hey mom, are you seeing this? And like, and so it's very different grief
Hmm.
situation walking through it. And I think it kind of goes back to the point that you said, like, I just have to walk through it. I can't try to force my grief over Eric to be like my grief like mom. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I can't. I just have to process through. Eric's death was very different. He chose that. And so I have to walk through the emotions that accompany a suicide. Whereas mom's death, in a way, I was thankful because she had suffered with Alzheimer's for so long and was so broken, and now she's free. And so it's just kind of, again, it's like the theme. I feel like there's been a little bit of theme of just walking through what we have to walk through this side of heaven, which is the brokenness, embracing it, and just then also allowing ourselves to lean into Jesus and allow him to kind of prepare our hearts and take care of our hearts and give us that grace that we need to walk through. So
Have you
um,
have you have you experienced any of the glory that has shined through the passing of Eric's death? Have you noticed like something like a change in your life, a way you do things, the way the ministry has gone? Have you seen any of the fruit from it?
look at you. This is why you're a good podcast host. You're flipping it on me. I know I have, and I've been able to celebrate that. So even a lot of like what God's been doing, even in my own personal ministry with starting my website and some projects that I'm working on the side people don't know about yet. Like I think, yeah, Eric's death spearheaded that. I had already been kind of working on things behind the scenes, just in relation to my story with mental illness and Being someone who's a pastor's wife with like 3 diagnosable mental illnesses, that's unheard of, and talking about that, openly. And then, Eric committed suicide. And I think at that point, I was just like, okay, I have to start speaking up. I have to start getting the message out there about mental illness and suicide, because I think people have a very different view on what it actually is. Like, people who are good people who can grow up in homes where their parents love them and for all intents and purposes looks like things were perfect, can have some deep struggles and that nobody knows about. And a lot of times they're afraid. Like, my brother was a pastor, but did not feel the freedom to be able to talk about his opioid addiction and be able to talk about his depression and his anxiety. And so as a result, never got the healing he needed. And so just, I think there's an anger towards Eric still at times. And I don't know, it'd be interesting to see if that ever fully goes away. But then I'm also getting to a point where I've healed enough where I can remember the good things and I can smile and I can hurt over the pain that he was in, because I understand that pain. And then I can also see like, okay, God's going to use his story. So in essence, like, his story isn't over yet because God's going to use it. So I think I'm not going to say it's gone completely full circle, because I think suicide's something that takes a while to heal from, but I think it's on its way. You know what I'm saying? I'm on my way of having it heal from full circle. But I'm in constant counseling over that, just processing it. Because I think you have survivor's guilt and you tend to blame yourself too. Suicide is such a fun thing, Zach.
No, it's a mess. And I don't know, I read this thing in one of, I don't know if you're familiar with the Passion Translation.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I need to look that one up.
Yeah, it's one that's not like, don't use it like on the big screen,
Sure.
It's one that's basically revised into kind of like a fiery version of like the word. A lot of it is very like similar to just the word in general, but it's definitely a little bit like boosted up with like poetry kind of vibes.
I love that.
I was just reading like one of the side excerpts, and it was talking about suicide, and like it's nearly impossible for somebody to do that once they know the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. And I don't know. I just really thought about that deeply. And I don't know, maybe it's because when the Bible tells you that you kind of just, this life is death, like it's already death to you, so like you've already conquered death because Jesus conquered death. So you're not afraid of death, So I don't know. I'm every time when I hear that, mental illness is going around and a lot of people are struggling with it, I always just like, and I think that this is where your voice can really come through and shine through that, because I've heard your story, multiple times, and I know you've come close and you've never done it. You've come close and you always went right back to Jesus, So I really do think that your platform of being able to reach those people that have struggled but maybe don't know Jesus like you do, and maybe bringing them in and having them their eyes open and their hearts open to who Jesus is, will actually subside those feelings and those emotions and those thoughts. And we can pray away those things for those people that do come to you, And that's why prayer is so powerful. Like, even when I read, I ask the Spirit to speak to me. And maybe it doesn't speak to me in that moment where I can like reflect and write or think about it, but maybe it speaks to me where I can deal with Armani's death in the future. To have these conversations later in life with somebody that might need them, So like a lot of times that's why I think prayer is so powerful, because like, even if it doesn't feel like it's working, it's kind of working, it might not work right there, but it's going to work in the future and whatnot. So like the path that you're on, I think is great to actually help people that are going through that, because you're not just doing it as a victim, you're doing it as a survivor. And I think that that's huge. And I think that that's what's going to resonate with a lot of people. And this podcast is definitely a great start, and your website.
Love that. I know.
Start,
Well, and I'm going to be picking your brain because you've had such success with yours. So I want to make sure people, it's I Like Birds. It's available anywhere podcasts. Everywhere. Okay. Yeah. So, and I think you just hit 5,000 is what I saw.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool to see that, just because I don't know, when I started it, I was like, man, if 4 people listen, I'll be excited, because it's like, who's going to click on a podcast about Jesus in the circle that I come from, and I had a few church friends, but it wasn't like, the board was very, very narrow on who I thought would listen to it. And, surprisingly, it was like my church people in Centerpoint, it was like, those were the last people to listen, it was like everybody else beforehand was like people that I never expected to like check it out, and they checked it out and they really enjoyed it, and they they like the organic, real, raw, kind of unstripped version of the gospel, So
Yeah. I love
yes,
that.
thank
Well,
you.
it's just a story like just go do something. Like I feel like that's how like your life has been. Is like you're like, I'm just gonna try stuff. Like I want
Yeah,
to
for
do it.
sure.
I'm gonna do it. And if
Yeah.
it takes off, awesome. And if it fails, like whatever, at least I tried it. And so,
Yeah.
but look at what's happening because you're trying something. And I think too, we forget like people right now, especially in the seasons that we're in, they don't want perfect. They just want someone to be present. They just want someone to be there that
Mm,
they can connect with. And I think even for me, as I've started this whole podcast thing, I don't ever want it scripted. And, it's funny. Sometimes people randomly swear and like, oh, I'm sorry, like, please, like, this is not like, this is just a
yeah.
conversation because people need to, and I like the Zoom format too, because people need to be able to see us, interact with us, because we're just, for so many people, they're isolated and they're discouraged. And so to have some contact and then to have people that aren't perfect, but just talking, I think is so encouraging. So
Yeah.
I like birds. Check it out. Follow Zach Rippey on socials. He's hysterical. He's awesome. He's deep, and you're gonna love it. And then you also need to go like stalk him to see all his beautiful wife and his gorgeous boys. So,
Thank you so much.
anyways, Zach, thank you so much again for being on today. I really appreciate it. And you guys make sure, I always forget to add this on the end of these things. And Brian's like, are you telling people about your website and your Praying Scared prayer journal, which sounds so weird to tell people about, but check out my website, NicoleGolden.org. Check out the prayer journal. It's free if you sign up for emails. Love to get you guys' thoughts on that. But y'all have a great day, and thanks so much for tuning in.